Where do you think? Well, we'll get into it, but how do you think they stack up so far for this tournament? Like, do you think they have a real good shot? Obviously, they're sitting on the 1 seed, but they've had some injury troubles, and
I think,
how are they looking right now?
yeah, Livers not being there is definitely a massive blow. Not only from his point production, but he's just one of their leaders and one of their guys that does a lot of things that the stat sheet doesn't show. And so I think they have a lot of depth, which has helped them throughout the course of the season, and that's going to help them this year. Uh, so if honestly looking at their game against Ohio State, I thought if they made about half of the shots that were close in that they missed, they would have won the game by 10 plus instead of having it come down to a last second shot. But even so, having that type of offensive kind of off game in terms of shooting and still being in a position to come back and have the chance to win the game at the end, I think gave them a lot of confidence and gave fans a lot of confidence that they can deal without Livers until he is potentially able to come back because they haven't put a timetable on it. But I mean, they're also, in my opinion, in the toughest region, so that doesn't help at all either.
Yeah, there are a lot of good teams down there, but I honestly, getting booted from the Big Ten tournament might actually be beneficial to them. It's another day of rest going into this thing, and they couldn't have really bolstered their stock any by winning the Big Ten tournament. I don't think it would have really changed much. So it actually could be a benefit to the Wolverines here.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of the things that we said about Michigan State, but when they beat us at the end of the season, like obviously you hate to lose a rivalry game, but it didn't change anything in terms of seeding. So if there was a game to lose, it was definitely that
one. So what's the one thing that you think from Michigan that hurts them the most? What's their biggest weakness that if this happens, then all hell breaks loose?
I think if Hunter Dickinson gets in foul trouble early, just because he's such a game changer inside. That's been different from the past years for them, because in the past with Beeline, they've been somewhat reliant on the three, and Dickinson being able to be a post presence, have a traditional kind of back to the basket type player where they can dump it down and get easy buckets down there off putbacks. And it also opens up an inside out element that they haven't necessarily had in the past. So I think that's been one of the biggest separators for them. When Illinois played them, one of the things I noticed is that Illinois' defense was incredibly aggressive, and it kind of threw them out of their rhythm offensively. And so as long as they're able to handle pressure and not let any sort of defense that they'll see potentially in LSU in the second round, as long as they can let that not affect how they perform on offense and not affect their flow, I think that'll help them the most. But it's also one of the biggest weaknesses that I've seen for sure.
And that region kind of plays to that weakness almost. You mentioned LSU, and then they could potentially see Florida State in the next round. They're long, lanky, athletic, and then it goes to Texas and Alabama.
Yep.
All those teams are long, lanky, and will get after you on defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's not to say Michigan can't handle the pressure, because they've definitely played against teams that pressure them a lot. But that was one of the biggest things that was contributing to them having kind of a bad shooting night against Illinois for sure that I saw.
I think them just playing in the Big Ten too is going to be great preparation, because it was such a strong conference this year, and I think 9 teams made it, most of anybody. So I think that's going to be a very it could be advantageous for them as long as it doesn't wear them out too early on that, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point. I thought Big Ten was the best conference this year, but that's also coming from a Midwest bias. But it's also coming from having some basketball experience as well.